Well, welcome back to the John Whitmer Show. Our lines are open, 316-869-1330. Joining us in studio now is our House Majority Leader, and, you know, usually we have to do this on the phone. Yeah. It is nice to see you again. Welcome, Dan Hawkins, to the John Whitmer Show.
John, it is awesome to be here. It's fantastic to be home. Pretty tired after the last 2 days. Very little sleep. I think I went 23 and a half hours without sleep yesterday. And I did get a nap of about 3 hours this afternoon, so I'm doing good.
And, you know, my listeners may, but I don't have any sympathy for you because I've been there. So, you know, it's like 23 hours, that's nothing. I've been there, brother. Yeah. So, and this is, it's kind of, what you ended 80-something days.
77.
70 in a budget year. Yeah. That's amazing. You didn't go 100 and something. No. That's holy cow.
Yeah, it was amazing. The media caught me after the budget finally passed. And they said, why did you push so hard for this? It's day 77. You've got another 13 days to allow Medicaid expansion to happen.
That's why.
and of course, they wanted to make the budget all about Medicaid expansion. And I said, well, you know, that's their deal. We are trying to fund government. We have core functions of government that we must fund, and to have a bunch of crazy people trying to hold up the process to the point of not being able to get our government funded, I don't think it bodes well for them. That's absolutely being an obstructionist.
Yeah, you know, there was all kinds of. It's very funny to see the narrative as it changes. You know, whenever they disagree with us, they always call us names, obstructionists and things like that, and yet that's what they do in these tactics. And it is so funny because they think they have the majority on their side. I've seen polling both ways on this, and a lot of it is depending on who's asking the question. If the American Cancer Society is asking the question, well, of course 70% of Kansans want Medicaid expansion, but that poll's not necessarily accurate.
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly how that poll was worded, but I remember when it came out, and that was clear back in 2016, I think, when the American Cancer Society did the Medicaid expansion poll. And when they did it, and they came out and said, oh, we got 70% of the people of Kansas who want Medicaid expansion, I called and I said, listen, I want to see how you polled, what the question was. When they sent it to me, they sent me an email with all their stuff, and I called them back and I said, even I would have answered that yes.
Yeah.
Polling. Sometimes polling, it's truly just about getting the answer that they want, so they have a narrative. So just recently, there was another poll, and I can't tell you who because they've never made it public, but it's a business organization here in Kansas did a poll on Medicaid expansion, and actually it was about 52%. That's quite a ways away from 70%.
Yeah, well, and I know that when they ask the follow-up question of paying for it, the numbers dramatically
drop
fall.
even more.
Yeah, they dramatically fall.
Get down around 40%.
Right, exactly. Point. I know they fall below 50 at that point. The other one that bothers me is the lot of talk whenever Fort Riley puts out their polling, and that's always because if you look at the metrics. They always weigh likely registered instead of likely voters.
Right.
They slant those numbers typically with more Democrats than Republicans. And so you can never trust the polling data. I look at it this way. Laura Kelly did not get 50% of Kansans to vote for her. She ran on Medicaid expansion. So right there, I can tell you that 49% of Kansans didn't vote for Laura Kelly.
That was an interesting piece here a while back. The press came to me and said, Laura Kelly's got a mandate. I said, a mandate? 9 counties voted for her. Only 9 out of 105 voted for her. She just happened to get the biggest.
Yeah.
And so that's a mandate? Really?
Yeah,
no, I said, I told him, I said, I don't see it as a mandate. And in fact, she got less than 50% of the vote.
Yeah, that's 49% of the voters voted for her. So that means that 51% didn't vote for her. That says something. So tell me, I mentioned in the intro there about those flyers. I've seen them. You can see the pictures. The little things, your medical bill is past due, and then the blood-stained things. And don't get me wrong, I get the tactics. I don't think they're effective. In fact, I think they're counter-effective. But especially as people are getting ready for the law enforcement memorial, which is always, I've had the pleasure of attending that even before I was in the legislature because of my role at Seapost. that's always it's wonderful to attend. It's solemn. They play the bagpipes and it's a great experience. So the cops ringing all 3 floors. But to do that right before that, I just think it's so tacky.
Well, it was. It's not only it's tacky. I think you are right. It's very counterproductive. They think that is going to move me, or it's going to move the Senate president or the majority leader of the Senate. Right now, they're attacking them. They weren't attacking our side. I got my share. I wanted that banner that they unfurled in the Capitol. I wanted to have that as one of my mementos, but they grabbed that up and took it out real quick. I did get a picture. I think I'll have a big picture framed with, Medicaid expansion. Hawkins has blood on his hands, and of course that day I went around shaking everybody's hand and asking them how their hand felt after shaking my hand. So,
well, and I tell people about that day when you and I attended one of the forums. And the lady came up to us with the ketchup, remember?
Yeah.
And she was going to spray ketchup on us and said that we had blood on our hands, and she threatened us with ketchup. It's like, okay, well, since you threatened to spray ketchup on me, I'm going to change my mind and vote the way you want me to. I mean, I guess it's those kind of shock tactics. I question how effective somebody needs to explain to them. It's like my mother used to say, you gather more, that's not going to work for you, folks.
Well, and so they use these the polling that is truly just a poll to get what they want. They use a narrative that actually doesn't have, the facts are skewed in their favor. So, just recently we had, actually at the start of this session, we had an article came out of Kentucky on Medicaid expansion, where Kentucky is underwater, about $2 billion on Medicaid expansion now, and literally they're trying to figure out how they're going to solve their problems there. They're looking at $300 million shortfalls a year, and they're wondering if they're going to have to shut Medicaid down. I had a lot of people know that there was a meeting with the governor. I did go to that. It was the majority leader in the Senate, Jim Denning, and then myself as the majority leader in the House. We had Gene Solentrop, who you've got on tonight, and of course we all know Brenda Landwehr. And there were a lot of things said in there, but at one point, one of the people in there said, so if it's so bad, why don't other states shut it down? And at that point, I was getting pretty frustrated with the whole narrative from the governor's side. And I looked at him and I said, it's politics. It is politics. And this guy is in politics. And I said, you've been in politics. You know that when you put an entitlement program in place, you cannot stop it no matter how bad it gets. You just keep paying. And that's what we would be faced with if that happened. We're going to suffer, and other things in government are going to suffer because of the sins of the legislature that passes it. So I take it upon myself. And people say I'm against the poor, I'm against this or that. Actually, that's not true at all, John. I believe that we ought to have people with we ought to take personal responsibility. My dad always taught me is the health insurance would be the last thing you would ever give up. People carry these phones around, John, that cost them $100 a month. They may have a $200 cable bill, but would they pay for health insurance? Oh no, they're going to do that. Have these things before. It's all about us taking care of ourselves, and our society is losing that. We're getting to a point to where they want government to do all, and when you do that, you're no longer a free society. And you and I are all about individual responsibility, and so. We've got to continue to fight this. We have to fight it with all of our being, because if we don't, we're going to slip into the abyss of government sponsored everything.
Well, and I think you're right, and I think you nailed it. It's the other agencies that are gonna suffer. We take a quick break. When we get back, I'd like to talk briefly about the budget debate, the call to House, and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Perfect. You're listening to the John Whitmer Show on 98.7 and 1330 KNSS. Well, welcome back to the John Whitmer Show. Studio lines 316-869-1330. With us in studio still is Dan Hawkins, our House Majority Leader. I know you've only got a few minutes left with us. Let me ask you real briefly a little bit about the budget debate, the that long wait while they tried to extort the Senate. I know you've done call the houses before. This one was a little unique.
Yeah, it was. So we haven't had long called the houses for a long time. John, you and I have experienced some very long ones in our time. We haven't, as of the last few years, had more than most of the time, maybe an hour call of the house. But this one was so important. We'd already went a whole day trying to break the log jam. It wasn't working. So we really needed to kind of stretch this out, get the folks a little tired. Get them angry. So you do that just by having a call of the House, having everybody sit there, and during that call of the House, we're trying to get to that 63 votes. 63 votes is what it takes to pass anything in the House, and we started out at 57. So when it came up 57 from the start, we knew we had a chance at that point. That's 6 votes. I started working a plan. The speaker and I were on the phone for 2 hours straight, calling. I called every single one of our members, even your friend that has your seat that you used to be in.
The temporary occupant.
Now I have to tell you, he wouldn't take my call, so he wouldn't answer his phone. But I certainly called. I called every single person. Many of the more moderate folks wouldn't answer their phones, but that's okay. Still made the calls. And in the end, it's just really a matter of working until we get that 63rd vote. We were actually working towards 65 because there were a couple of people on that original vote that we felt would probably flip if we ended the call of the House, because you can't start it back up. Once you end the call of the House and bring your rabbit in, it's over, so we had to have over 65 or 63. We were actually going for 65. I had 65 actually. And once we hit 63, all of those moderates that had been out there blocking the budget for the last 2 days came on board. They didn't want to be out there hanging by themselves, which I think is very telling. I mean, it's truly telling.
It was funny, as I had to follow on Twitter. And what's sad, because I really hate Twitter, and it's so when you're listening to if you listen to the hashtag KSLedge feed, it's so left dominated. It's really sickening to watch it because they're so filled with trolls and lefties. But what was funny is once they was all hang in there, we're with you, and the minute all of the rhinos and the mods jump back in.
They
started tearing into them and hating on them, and we're going to primary you, and we hate you, and cuss words. And it reminded me that all of these moderate Republicans who are so loyal to these Dems and the liberals, it's like, guys, why do you bother? These people hate you as much as they hate a conservative, and they will never support you in an election.
They only use you to get what they want. It's just like a lot of up there in Johnson County, several of the moderates, they were really Democrats that had changed to the Republican side to get elected, but they were so liberal, moderate, whatever you want to call them. They felt like that their voting record, the Democrats should like them, and they could not believe that the Democrats came after them and unseated them.
Oh, it is so funny. I remember when Barbara Bollier, who's a doctor, who finally switched and was honest and switched to being a Democrat. But I remember when she got stickers put on her yard signs that said Brownbacker and how mad she was, couldn't believe the Democrats came after her. It's like, guys, they hate you. You have an R behind your name. They don't care if you're a moderate R or a conservative R. They still hate you.
So really what we have, John, is a situation where people feel like that they have the ability to move, but then they find out when they leave their base, it's over. And our base is more of our traditional conservative voters out there, and that's really all across the state except for Johnson County. But when you leave that, what do you have? Because those other people don't want you. They want the Democrats in there.
Yeah.
So
well, and I just want to thank you for you guys. You put up the fight. You did your due diligence. You ended up with what 80, 79, I think was
there
the
was
final
79
number.
to 45 was in,
and it's a good budget. You got more money for corrections. You did what you needed to do. I'm not too thrilled about the new money for schools, only because it was extorted, and there's no accountability in there. But you know what? Hopefully it'll end the lawsuits. I doubt it because for them it's never enough. But the good thing is
we also got some more money back
expansion,
into roads this time compared to the past. So that's going to be a big deal.
I think, I'm just glad you were able to get in and get out and not expand Medicaid. So, good work. Good on you.
77 days, John. That's pretty darn good.
Especially with Laura Kelly in the governor's office.
Absolutely.
So, good work this session. And you guys go back, May 29th?
May 29th, 10 a.m. for Sine Die.
That should be entertaining. You may have a veto to try and override.
Most likely. Yeah, the tax bill, I'm sure, will get vetoed, and we'll try to override that. Well, when we get back, we'll see what Secretary of State Scott Schwab has to say. You're listening to The John Whitmer Show on 98.7 and 1330 KNSS.
98.7 and 1330 KNSS. KNSS.